Welcome once again to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Scott Mailwig at Sports 25 to Life. Talking about tonight's 8-game slate, and if you're playing tonight's slate, there's one obvious top option at pitcher. You're playing him, and then, of course, on DraftKings, you're playing a second pitcher. So we'll just go ahead and tell you who you're playing as your first pitcher, and that's Chris Sale against Houston. Finally looks like the Chris Sale that we all know and love. Struggled a little bit earlier in the season, but 42.8, 42.9 in his last two games. The guy's been absolutely incredible. It is a Houston team that loves to swing and miss.
Yep.
I don't see any way that anyone's even close to him tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Houston's probably slightly better strikeout-wise against lefties, and they're still terrible against lefties in that department. So I agree with you. I think he's by far the top option. I'm going to have him locked in on basically every site, especially DraftKings, where you're taking two pitchers, and it seems like there's a couple actually like low 2000s hitters that are usable today that'll make him really easy to get. It'll be depend on lineups a little bit, but I mean, I'm going to have him probably 100% cash games and a decent amount in GPPs too.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, single pitcher sites, two pitcher sites, doesn't matter for me. Chris Sale will be in all of them. He's $10,400. Your next option, there's a little bit of a weather concern here, but A.J. Burnett's in a fine spot also against Milwaukee. Not a guy I'm feeling great about paying almost $10,000 for, though, so that kind of takes that away a little bit. But Lance McCullers is the guy that's going to be popular, $7,400, coming off that impressive performance he had last time out, 44.4, 4 hits, a 1 earned run, and 9 innings pitched, complete game, 11 Ks. But he struggled with pitch count before, so you certainly aren't expecting that, but maybe somewhere in the middle from his starts before.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about him today, especially with just like how sluggish the White Sox bats have been. His price is down a little bit still. I mean, the biggest problem with him today, as far as like not being a really solid option, is that he's facing Sale and isn't very much of a likely win there. I mean, he's only surprisingly plus 130 right now. With the way Sale's pitching, that seems a little low, if anything. But I mean, I like him. The biggest problem is I'm not going to be pairing him with Sale on DraftKings because I want the chance at 2 wins for sure. I don't like playing pitchers against each other unless it's like a really weird slate, which tonight's not a great slate, but there's enough other pitchers out there that I'm not going to go out pairing them, especially in GPPs.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that's fair. He's going to be a popular option though, especially because of his last start was so good. A guy who I was picking on last time against his team because he struggles against lefties a lot, then turned around and had a great performance. Mike Leake, this same team last week, 8 innings, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 9 Ks, 29 fantasy points. He's not a guy you feel great about, but at $6,200, this is still a pretty bad Philly offense. So I don't think he's a bad guy to pair up with someone tonight.
Yeah, I don't think so either. We saw Ryan Vogelsong have a decent day against them yesterday. It wasn't great. He gave up a few runs trying to go out there for the 7th inning. He probably shouldn't have. But, I mean, I think Leake can get the job done against what's a really bad Phillies offense. I mean, they didn't even get to Vogelsong yesterday. I think they had a couple early runs, and then they didn't get to him until he was, like, starting to throw 87, 88 every time up there in the 7th inning when he really probably shouldn't have been out there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's really not a whole lot of other guys to like tonight. I mean, this is not a great slate for pitching outside of these guys that we've already mentioned. Who is there anybody else that's really catching your eye, like a guy that you feel excited about playing tonight?
I like A.J. Burnett quite a bit. I mean, I really struggled to believe that he's as good as he's been this season, but I mean, he's been doing it almost every game. I mean, his last 2 starts have probably been his worst ones, and they weren't even that terrible. I mean, he only gave up 4 runs in both of them, struggled with pitch count and walks a little bit more than he has. But, I mean, he's been rock solid this season. Prior to those 2 games, I think he'd thrown 7 innings in 6 of his last 7 starts. Milwaukee's still not a team I'm scared of, especially against righties. They're a little bit better against lefties at this point. But as much as I don't really want to pay $9,500 for A.J. Burnett, I think he's a pretty solid play. The most interesting GPP guy to me probably is Shelby Miller against San Diego. San Diego's just looked awful with Matt Kemp being in. I mean, I guess we'd call it a Matt Kemp slump because we've seen it a few times over the last couple of years now. But I mean, he's just been doing nothing, hitting in the 4 hole for them. They got a couple other guys banged up. Their offense isn't what it was at the beginning of the season. Miller hasn't been anything special, but he's that one guy in that like 8,000 price range today. I think he's the only one between what 77 and 90 something, like 93 or something like that. So I think he's an interesting play. That might drive him to be a little bit heavier owned than I'd like, but he's a guy we've seen put up 35, 40 a couple times on DraftKings so far this year. I like him quite a bit as a GPP play against the Brewers.
Yeah, I mean, the only knock on him really is that he doesn't have that big strikeout rate, but we've seen him pitch really deep into games and be effective. So, if he's being effective pitching deep, then you don't have to have those strikeouts for him to be a good play tonight.
Yeah, right. I mean, the innings pitched are almost as valuable, if not as valuable, really. As long as you're going out there and giving 7, 8 innings, I mean, that can make up for having 4 or 5 strikeouts instead of 6 or 7 for a guy, compared to a guy like, trying to think, like Jimmy Nelson today, for instance, probably has a little bit more strikeout potential, but not going to go very deep into the game at all, even if he's pitching well.
Yeah, and especially on a two-pitcher site, the way the scoring is on DraftKings, you're fine with the guy eating up the innings and not getting strikeouts because if he's not giving up a lot of hits, like, for instance, you put him versus Ian Kennedy, you just look at Miller's whip is 1, and Ian Kennedy's 1.47. So you're saying that every 2 innings he's giving up at least another base runner. That's just not a road that you're liking to travel tonight, especially on a site that penalizes you for walks and hits allowed.
Yeah, another guy that I think is a decent GPP play that I'm probably going with to pair with Sale over McCullers is Bolsinger for the Dodgers. I mean, he's a -165 favorite right now. Arizona hasn't been quite as good against righties and definitely hasn't been as good on the road. I think he might even be my cash game pairing with Sale a decent amount. I think he's a really solid value at 7,000. We saw him throw a really nice game, I think, 2 games ago where he went 7 innings and struck out 7 guys. I think something like that.
8-8 actually.
Yeah, 8-8. You're right, against San Diego. Then he went and faced St. Louis and then at Colorado, which no one's going to go through that really well.
Strike that from the record.
Yeah, right. And he was even good the game before that against Colorado at home. He threw 6 innings, struck out 6 guys, and gave up 0 earned runs. So he was really starting to look good. Even that first game he started against Miami, he was pretty solid. I like him quite a bit tonight. I think he's going to be a little bit of an under-the-radar play because he's not one of those like top prospect guys. I think he's like 27 or 28 already. But he seems like he's getting the job done, and the Dodgers just keep winning, and that's the biggest thing for a guy priced in that range. If you can get that win to go with the upside of Sale, I think you're in a great spot.
Yeah, absolutely. As we move over here to catcher, obviously you love Russell Martin at the top there, 4,300. His teammate Deoner Navarro, cheap on some other sites, 4,000, a little bit much for him tonight. Same goes for Yadi Molina, if you ask me, 3,900. He just doesn't have enough power, even in Coors Field, that I really feel like playing him. I'll probably be looking more towards the Coors guys on the other side. Nick Hundley's 3,500, Michael McHenry 33. Whichever one of those guys in the lineup, or even Willen Rosario 35. You prefer him against a lefty, but catcher is a good place to get yourself some fairly cheap exposure to that game.
Yeah, I don't think Molina has enough power to be like a really like must-play type Coors guy at 3,900. It just doesn't feel like it, especially against a righty. I just don't feel great about that. I'll be looking at Russell Martin probably the most. He's the obvious play here against a lefty at Toronto. I mean, that whole Toronto lineup is like their splits of versus lefty and at home are like ridiculous. So, I mean, we're going to have a lot of them probably today. AJ Pierzynski, not a bad play. I don't think a catcher. Yasmani Grandal's probably the other guy I'll look at a little bit in that 4,000 range just because he's facing a righty in De La Rosa that doesn't really scare me. I don't love his lineup spot right now, but with the way the Dodgers lineup is hitting as a whole, I mean, none of their lineup spots are all that bad.
True. And I'll throw out one more cheap guy, Sal Perez, $3,500 against fly ball pitcher Phil Hughes. He's home in 2 straight games. You hate his lineup spot, but he's got a lot of power for a cheap guy like that. So that's why I'll be targeting him. First base, my top option, assuming that Edwin Encarnacion is not playing. It's up in the air whether he'll play tonight or not. But I love Adrian Gonzalez. Ruby De La Rosa, very good against righties, very bad against lefties. So Agon at $4,900 is going to be my top guy tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I like him quite a bit. The tough part about that Toronto thing is if Encarnacion doesn't play, are they going to play Smoke against a lefty? I mean, he's been terrible against... I know he's a switch hitter, but he has not been good from the right side of the plate very often.
No.
So that'll be interesting. I mean, 3,100 puts him in play, though, in the middle of that lineup. He's probably going to be hitting 5th if he's in there for Encarnacion. So that makes him kind of interesting. That's probably the one guy I would go to as a value-type play at first base. Ryan Howard's not terrible against Leak, but like you said, Leak dominated them last time they faced them a week ago. So I don't feel really confident in that. One guy that is interesting to me in that 3,300 is Ben Paulson for Colorado against Lackey. That's a pretty nice price for playing at Coors. So there's some 3,000 guys you can go with today. I think I agree with you that Adrian Gonzalez is a cash game play here, though. I don't mind Freddie Freeman, but I'm just going to pay $100 more for Adrian Gonzalez almost every single time. So he doesn't really come into play a ton for me.
Completely agree with you there. One more guy I'll throw out for tournaments. Yonder Alonso's been hitting pretty well since he came back up.
Yeah.
Obviously a tough matchup with Shelby Miller, but Shelby Miller much, much tougher on righties than he is on lefties. So I think that's the way to go. And as always, we'll give you the statement that we don't like paying down at first base because there's always so many options. So get one of these big bats in your lineups tonight, especially your cash games. Second base, Colton Wong is your most expensive option. He's going to be leading off. You assume he's going to be leading off at least at Colorado today against David Hale, who has not been very good at all, especially against lefties.
Yep.
So certainly looking his way. I love Brian Dozier at $4,600 against the lefty in tournaments. I mean, same old story there. If you haven't heard it now, and this is the first time, then just wait till next time he's facing a lefty, and you'll hear it again because that's who you play against the lefty in tournaments.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the obvious play there. Dozier. I mean, you don't really want to go Altuve against Sale, even though it is a lefty. I think Dozier's a much better play today, even for $700 more. Colton Wong is probably the guy I'll look at a decent amount if I'm spending up also. Probably between him and Dozier. I like him against Hale at Colorado. I hate paying $4,800 for these guys that don't have a ton of power because, I mean, yeah, St. Louis has been scoring a bunch of runs, and they're probably going to score a bunch of runs at Colorado, but I mean, they just don't hit a ton of home runs, and so it's hard to pay $4,500, $5,000 for all of these guys on St. Louis when you know you're probably only getting maybe 1 or 2 home runs on a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, you're paying top dollar. You want guys that can put them into the seats once, multiple times even, and they don't really provide that. You can mention Chase Utley. Like we said, Mike Leake did have a great performance against him last time out, but he is really good against lefties. As far as cheap options at second base, really nothing that I'm interested in tonight. Third base options, Josh Donaldson at home against the lefty. Another one of those ones you've heard a million times. He's just an incredible play, as always, against the lefty. $5,300, though, you got to pay for him. If you can't afford him, I always like to pivot to his teammate, Danny Valencia, at $3,200, also very good against lefties. And he gives you that cheap exposure to that lineup, and should be batting right around 6th tonight as well.
Yep, definitely.
Other options at third base, Todd Frazier, if you're picking on Cole Hamels, which you're not going to try to do very often, but at home against the lefty, we know Todd Frazier has a ton of power. You can look that direction with him.
He's another guy like Donaldson. Both of them just have incredible versus lefty and home splits. I think Frazier's versus lefty and home splits are like an 1,100 OPS or something like that compared to like 690 on the road.
Yeah.
He's a great play. I'm just going to have a hard time fitting both him and Donaldson into my lineup with, both the cheap first base options and Adrian Gonzalez out there today.
Yeah, absolutely. Another option, Trevor Plouffe at $3,700 against the lefty. You can certainly consider him. He's got great numbers against the lefty. He's struggled the last couple games, but nothing that's concerning me too much. And if you really need a cheap guy that's got some upside, he's going to be forced in the lineup again since Matt Adams on the DL. Mark Reynolds, $3,300. You know he strikes out a ton, but he also has a ton of power, so I don't think he's a bad option tonight in Coors Field.
Yeah, I agree. I like that too.
All right. As far as cheap options, I already mentioned Danny Valencia, of course, at $3,200. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's really nothing that I like. Is there anything you like here down in the bargain bin?
Nothing I love. I agree with you that Valencia is probably the best cheap play. I don't mind Mike Moustakas against Phil Hughes for $3,300, but he just doesn't have a ton of upside. And like I said, I'm trying to play Frazier or Donaldson almost exclusively tonight at third base, so I don't really want to go really cheap here. I think it's better to go cheap at places where it's not such an obvious good play. But if I'm going cheap at all, it's probably going to be that Moustakas play. Maybe Jace Peterson against Ian Kennedy, but I think I like Moustakas more.
Yeah, I'm with you there. As we look over to shortstop, got a log jam up at the top. Troy Tulowitzki finally starting to hit. Gets John Lackey tonight, $4,900. Johnny Peralta, similar situation. Coors Field gets David Hale. Yeah. And then Jose Reyes at that same price. I think Reyes is a fine play, but I don't see any way that I play him over these other two guys.
No, I need a discount to go away from those two guys in chorus who've been the two best shortstops lately. Yep. Shortstop's a position I'll be looking to go a little bit cheap at probably. Cincinnati has Avanda Jesus up, who's 2,100, and he's been hitting lefties pretty well in the minors. He might get a start today and hit in a decent spot in the lineup. I'd look at him. Couple other cheap guys out here, like Freddie Galvis against Leak, I don't mind for Philly. There's one other guy I had listed here. Luis Sardinas for Milwaukee. He's been hitting low in the lineup, but I don't mind him as a lefty against Burnett. He's 2,200. This is just if I'm going really cheap. Yeah. I would like to play probably Tulowitzki or Peralta, probably Tulowitzki, but it's going to be hard to spend up at every position tonight unless you're going like really cheap in the outfield and really cheap on second pitcher.
Yeah, that's true. And if you want a really cheap or a cheap low-owned guy, Carlos Correa finally got called up. He should be in the lineup tonight. You're obviously not trying to target Chris Sale, but $3,600. I think he makes for an interesting one-of bullet if you're making a lot of lineups. All right, as we move to the outfield here, Jose Bautista, $5,400. Finally healthy, finally locked in. He's destroying the ball right now. $5,400. I mean, you need to get yourself some exposure to Joey Bats, Jose Bautista at some point tonight because he's just in such a great spot.
Yeah, definitely.
On the opposite side of that game, Giancarlo Stanton, of course, against home run machine. Marco Estrada certainly in play. I'm not paying $5,100 for Jason Hayward tonight, or probably even $4,800 for Matt Holliday. Holliday's been fine, but he's not showing power. Just not something I feel good about at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think his power will come around though. Maybe it'll be this week. Who knows? I think he's a really good GPP play. I don't know if I want to play him in cash games for that price, just because. I mean, I think you can get just as much production from elsewhere, but I think he's a great GPP play.
Yeah, I'm with you there. As far as cheap options go, Odubel Herrera is a lefty. He's got some speed. You're certainly not chasing his second home run of the season that he hit in the last game, but he's got to hit doubles, triples, get on base, score runs. If you have to have a cheap guy, lefty against Mike Leake is not a bad way to go at $3K.
Yeah, I have another one of those guys for you. Shane Robinson from Minnesota has been hitting second in the lineup against lefties. Hasn't been anything special by any means, but he's gotten on base 6 out of the 11 games he's started so far this year. I just like that 2,200, 2,300 price tag. Yep. If he's in the second spot in the order, that's just really hard to pass up today with the ability to spend up really well at other positions.
Yeah, I'm with you there. You're going to need to get yourself some cheap spots so that you can get some of these big hitters. A couple other guys that played. Jock Peterson, another lefty, against Ruby De La Rosa at home. We all know what he can do. I don't love a lot of these guys in the middle here. Depending on who's in the lineup, you can see Randall Grichuk at $3,900 or Peter Borges at $3,800. Similar guys. I prefer Grichuk if he's in the lineup. He's got a little bit more power. I think he's an interesting Coors option tonight.
Yeah, I do too. I don't mind him at all. That's a good price on him. As far as other guys like in the middle go, I don't mind Jock Peterson against De La Rosa today for $4,400. I think he's a solid GPP play. Not a ton else in the middle, though. I mean, Chris Coviello, if he's hitting fourth again with Edwin Encarnacion out, he's a great play. Really hard to argue with him against a lefty in hand that just hasn't been very good. I mean, I expect him to be probably the highest owned outfielder just because of his price and batting order combination if Encarnacion's out.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, he should be a big part of that offense that, as usual, expected to put up a ton of runs tonight. So, anybody else you want to point out before we get out of here?
One other guy I'd look at is Gregory Polanco today at $4,400 against a righty in Nelson that tends to make a lot of mistakes. Polanco's been banged up, but it sounds like he's going to be back in the lineup today, and I think he's a pretty good play in GPPs also. But, I mean, cash games, I think the plays are pretty obvious, sticking at Colorado. Probably look at Toronto quite a bit, too. I mean, it's going to be all about finding the cheap guys that make the lineups work with some of these more expensive guys on DraftKings because, again, they have them all priced really well.
Absolutely. With that, that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out all of our content at dailyfantasycafe.com.